Several months ago, I reviewed Bounty Drag Racing. Drag Racing evolved here on this channel. For those that may not have heard of it before, made almost entirely by one person, Bounty Drag Racing is a multiplayer-only drag racing game featuring just about any class and race type you could ask for. From flashlight start street races to sportsman bracket racing, several radial tire classes, and all the professional categories that exist today, and at least one that is completely made up, sort of. Including DLC content, there are at the time of recording this 100 total vehicles to choose from in 18 separate categories. Vehicles in many of those categories can be fitted with your choice of engine combination within any number of classes each. Bounty Drag Racing currently features a total of 15 venues with working day-night cycles that affect both weather conditions and traction levels at each. If you are into the sport of drag racing in any form, Bounty offers just about everything you could ask for. While this was already the case back when I wrote my initial review for the game, at the time, I felt that Bounty Drag Racing was lacking in many other important aspects, with game-breaking bugs, outdated and awkward UI, and just a general lack of consistency and quality throughout. Were I to rate it on a 1 to 10 scale at the time, I think a 2.5 to 3 would have been as high as I could go. For a full breakdown of the various issues and problems, I'd invite you to go check that video out if you haven't already. If nothing else, you'll gain some appreciation for how far things have come since, and that is the reason for this re-review. Now before I get into it, if you enjoy this video or find it helpful, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. And if this is the sort of stuff you're into, subscribe to the channel for more, hit that bell for notifications, and share it with your friends. If you don't have any friends, share it with your enemies. So, what's all changed in the past several months that would prompt me to make a whole new review video for a game I've already reviewed? Well, Bounty Drag Racing, being essentially one man's passion project, has been consistently and constantly evolving over time, and I'm happy to report that most of the issues I had with Bounty Drag Racing during my initial review of it have been largely fixed, and what we have now, although not perfect, is a much better game than before, all things considered. Starting at the beginning, the game no longer crashes on startup simply because you had a controller or a wheel plugged in or turned on before loading the game. While you're still faced with staring at the initial loading screen for what seems like forever sometimes, if you're patient, the game will load for you eventually and you should be able to play it just fine, and I've yet to experience a single game crash since this issue has been addressed. Once at the main menu, things look much as they did before. Setting up your controls, whether you're using keyboard and mouse, a gamepad, or a wheel, is pretty straightforward for anyone that's played any other racing games on a PC. You're probably going to want to do this step during your first testing session, simply to acquaint yourself with what control does what, rather than guessing at what the default settings are. Although Bounty Drag Racing relies much more on your CPU than your GPU, there are various graphic settings for most of the usual stuff that can be adjusted if your PC is struggling, such as general quality, resolutions, shadows, etc. And unlike older versions of the game, these options can now be saved and load without revisiting the screen each time you load the game. Sounds standard, but this hasn't been working until recently. What I would like to see added here, however, is a setting for reflection quality. As it is, to its credit, the cars in Bounty Drag Racing feature some of the best and most accurate reflection mapping I may have seen in a video game not reliant on RTX. While it's impressive, I can't help but to wonder if this has anything to do with the frame rates tanking when you get so many cars into the same race lobby together. For an awful lot of Bounty Drag Racers, this is a problem. Many racing games have the option to reduce or even turn reflections off for this reason, on your own vehicle or your opponent's. I think this could be a welcome addition here for many. New to the game option menu is wheel stagger. In short, this determines the distance your vehicle has to move to roll the front wheels out of the staging beams on the starting line. The lower it is, the quicker the vehicle does this, resulting in a better reaction time. A higher setting here will slow your reaction time, but does give you a few extra inches to get moving before the front tire leaves the stage beams, which results in quicker times on the racetrack from start to finish. In heads up first to the finish line competition, using the max setting here is almost required if you want to put up competitive numbers and hope to win some rounds or an event. Unfortunately, by default, this is set somewhere in the middle, and given that it's part of the general game options and not in the vehicle tuning menus, it goes unnoticed by almost all of the new players that I've ever asked. One of two things has to be fixed here. The setting needs to either be moved to the tuning menus, or it has to be set to maximum default. It doesn't quite seem fair to bury a setting that's worth at least a couple hundredths of a second on racetrack performance in the place it's least likely to be looked for. Moving on to the vehicles themselves, I'm happy to say that much has improved here. First of all, in the garage, the selection method has been updated from the old click through them all till you find one you want method to much more standard thumbnail sorted by category that can be searched by dragging the selections with your mouse or keyboard. One of my favorite features in Bounty Drag Racing since its inception has been the paint booth, and how simple and easy it is to create some pretty cool looking works of art. Things have gotten better here as well. For starters, a bug that existed for a long time, requiring users to make 2 save files of their first paint job on each vehicle in order not to lose them, has been fixed. Another more specific bug that had the paint jobs on the Pro Mod wheelies get flipped as soon as you click the undo button has also been fixed. A new category has been added to the decal selections that features various lights and grills for each of the models now, where before, painters had to find or create and import that stuff into the game themselves. So long as this is updated with each new vehicle added to the game, and so far so good, then I have no further problems with this. One problem I do have is more related to the models themselves, but becomes evident when attempting to paint them, and that's that some models could use a little cleaning up, as it were. Taking any sticker and moving it around on some of these models will reveal the issue. When you're applying graphics or lettering to specific locations, things can come out looking a bit messy. Talking with the developer, the concern is that fixing this issue would likely break everyone's existing paint jobs on these vehicles, which I do get, but we do pay extra for many of these cars, and if it means we can paint them how we like without having to compromise our designs based on flaws in the model, then I'm certainly for it. And finally, I'm also happy to report that the paint booth itself will soon, if not by the time you're watching this, actually resemble a paint booth, something that I'm looking forward to. The garage setting is nice and all, but with the shadows falling across the cars and ground from the skylights above, it's not an ideal setting for doing detailed paint work. Car models themselves, although still having some issues in the paint booth, have been improved overall since my original review. Although they've always mostly looked respectable from the outside, from the cockpit or under the hoods, there were some issues. While I can't remember the last time I used the remove hood option in game, I have always played the game using a cockpit camera, so being able to see my grille and headlights over the dash and missing inner door panels was always a bit immersion breaking to me. Thankfully, this has been fixed on all of the vehicles within the game now, and is no longer an issue. You're not getting AAA level textures and details on anything, but I wouldn't expect that on a game made mostly by a single person, and I'm fine with what we have now. Once at the tracks, and in the tuning menu, the vehicles have all the customizations options they previously had, now with the addition of new engine sounds for some of the classes. Which I don't get too picky about, but I like that it's there, and would welcome more emerging adding additions like this in the future. One thing that's been experimented with in the sand drag vehicles is the sounds cars make while coasting. Incorporating rear end whine with the sound of sand and stone hitting the underside of the vehicle is something I would like to see expanded to the rest of the cars. You don't need to make a photorealistic game to get people immersed in it if the little things like this are done right. Of course, all of that means nothing if the vehicles themselves are not fun to tune or drive. Thankfully, we've got improvements here as well. Tuning menus for most vehicles have been stripped of options not available for the classes they are supposed to represent, and driving options, such as automatic transmissions, are sometimes restricted only to classes that would allow them, with some possibly overlooked exceptions like the Pro Mod motorcycles and the Nostalgia classes. Classes that were for a long time unusable due to various problems, such as the motorcycles, have received some attention and are now much better than they were. For the most part, most classes are now decent enough representations of what they're supposed to be. Exceptions, as far as I've noticed, being the Top Fuel motorcycle that runs with nitrous instead of nitro, and the Top Fuel and Funny Car classes, which are so different from how any other vehicle operates that only a rare few games have ever properly done them any justice. Bounty Drag Racing is not one of those games. As for where the rubber meets the road, the vehicle physics, or lack of, have been addressed in recent updates as well, and for the most part, I like where it's going. Gone are the days of dead hooking off the starting lines, vehicles that simply go straight so long as you're on the throttle, and vehicles that don't the instant you let off. To get the best out of a vehicle now generally requires you to set them up with some degree of wheel spin off the starting line with a more noticeable limit. Should you overstep that limit in your tune-up, too much wheel speed now makes the car turn right. If you're able to catch it, a quick pedal job can sometimes salvage your run. This was not the case before. Also new to the tuning menus is the engine dyno. Each engine combination in the game operates on a different fixed power curve now, so this is very useful to get the most out of your vehicles. Previously, the game had a kind of floating power curve that would stretch or compress depending on what you set the engine's RPM limit at, making for some rather unrealistic tune-ups, such as pro stock cars that actually work better at far lower RPMs than they do in reality, so this is a good fix. Engines now perform best in the RPM range that they would in the actual car they represent. Finally, my favorite addition to the new improved tuning menu is a search filter. Gone are the days of searching through an endless list of all your safe setups to find the one that you're looking for. Now you can just type whatever you need to in the search box and it will separate the setups based on that search, making finding the one you're after much quicker and easier than before. Although not part of the tuning menu itself, the car is now auto repair when you use the tow to pit option after each pass, meaning you don't have to do that yourself every time now. Yay. Moving on to the racetracks. There have been some additions since my initial review and improvements all the way around to many others. New to the game is the Backwood Hills No Prep Street Course. Made up of 2 narrow 1/8 mile lanes with a very uphill shutdown area, it's a tricky but fun location. There's also a new 1/8 mile street course called the Factory, featuring flashlight starts in an industrial setting, complete with the sort of crowd you would expect to see on the starting line of any good street race. And for those that enjoy the new supercar category, there's the new half-mile Highway 175. That, well, looks like a highway. Burnout boxes have been fixed at both SPE, Motorplex, and Australia Dragway, no longer requiring players to burn out before pulling into them. The staging lanes at Arecibo Dragway, once very narrow and awkward, have been completely rebuilt to accommodate several lanes, with more than enough room to maneuver most cars smoothly and easily into burnout boxes, without the need for 3-point turns. It's a welcome change that makes for smoother gameplay, but maybe a little further than I would have gone to fix the original, yet authentically confined space that exists at the real track. I would have been happy with just moving the box truck that had been blocking the lanes here. A couple other tracks have been given a different sort of upgrade, specifically the sand drag track Roifa and the long since closed in real life South Beach Motorsports Park. Using drone scanning, these venues have been completely retextured to give them a more realistic look compared to previous versions. My biggest complaint about the tracks in my original review was their overly simplistic look and uneven transitions from the center grooves to the inside or outside of the lanes. Thankfully, those transitions have been largely smoothed out, and with more tracks soon to feature these upgraded drone scan textures, things are starting to look better as well. It's not perfect, but at the tracks that have been redone so far, it does look better. The surface at South Beach certainly does look like a track that's been closed for over a decade. Now I'm looking forward to seeing what a good track surface looks like redone. Something I would like to see going forward is for each track to have its own variable weather conditions. Out of the prep drag strips in the game, Texas Alley, Caribbean Speedway, and South Beach currently have their own unique day-night weather loop, while Arecibo, Atco, Georgia, Australia, SPE Motorplex, and SLM Raceway are identical to each other in this respect. Although given the fact that the community events are run almost exclusively in perfect conditions, and weather changes mid-event happen at best a couple times a year, I get this not being a big priority, as it will almost certainly never be used. And should one venue end up being as much as 1 or 2 hundredths of a second quicker than any other, you're going to have a game full of other tracks that will likely never get used again, at least for heads-up racing. This brings us to the gameplay itself. In this respect, things haven't quite improved as much. Some recent network tweaks have gone some ways to make watching the action a little bit smoother, but overall performance could still use some optimizing. Because this is still an entirely open world game, there are no systems in place that automatically run through and score events. There are tools to track qualifying results and set up the elimination ladders, but it's up to the event hosts to call competitors to the lanes and pair everyone up. And it's up to the competitors to pay attention to the in-game chat and follow instructions given. The only way for others to know what's going on is to use those tools as well, or wait for the event host to post the results to the game's Discord channel. Actual gameplay during a community event is mostly comprised of slowly moving your car forward through the staging lanes one pair at a time for 5 to 10 minutes, followed by about a minute of action once you've reached the burnout box, and another minute or so to adjust your tune-up after your pass if needed, before the loop begins again. 2 of those minutes are fun. The other 5 to 10, tedious and mostly boring. I do wish there was a system that just allowed me to watch everyone else run without having to constantly babysit my car until it's my turn during these races. Finally, with no AI opponents to hone your skills against, if you want to actually compete in any organized events, you're going to have to become a part of the Bounty Drag Racing Discord community. To make that simple, your invite can be found right on the game's main menu. I wish I could say things have improved here as well, but it's still a mixed bag. While Bounty Drag Racing has been around for a few years now at this point, the Discord community is still fairly small and comprised mostly of a handful of veterans with a revolving door of new names that come through. It's here where you'll find all the information you need regarding daily, points or official event scheduling and results, as well as development news as it comes. Daily events happen most evenings for the American time zones, and there's usually a few each night, which is nice, but races are practically forbidden by the community from ever overlapping one another, so if you're not into what's being run at any given time, you're kinda shit out of luck. You're of course welcome to try and host something on the side yourself, but good luck with that. As it is right now, if you're a fan of bracket racing, outlaw, radial, and pro mod stuff, with a sprinkling of imports and no prep on the side, there's likely enough racing here to be found to keep you satisfied for at least a while. If you're into anything else, you may be disappointed, as there's a lot of content here that's still mostly ignored or forgotten. Sand drags have existed in the game for at least a couple of years or so now, and I don't think there's been much more than a half dozen events ever with them. Nostalgia stuff was requested for some time, hyped, introduced, and pretty much ignored since. And the front and all-wheel drive classes, pro stocks, and grudge bikes could all be put on the milk cartons. For the most part, you could compete in the overwhelming majority of bounty drag racing community events in one variation or another of just 4 cars. Couple that with the fact that most of the tracks in the game are identical in the ways that should make them interesting, in a community that defaults to the best possible conditions anyways. For me personally, it gets to be repetitive, boring, and predictable when you're just making the same run over and over again, day after day, week after week. And I have found myself losing a lot of interest in it of late. I do have close to 2,000 hours with the game, but I don't think that's entirely from burnout. Better in-game systems and more meaningful variations from venue to venue could be a good start to sparking some of that interest again. Overall though, I am generally much happy with the state of bounty drag racing as a game. It no longer feels half broken. The majority of the issues I've brought up in the past have been addressed, and I do look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. Were I to score it on a 1 to 10 scale today, I would say it's probably a 5 or 5.5, up from the 2.5 to 3 I would have given it before, so that's a decent improvement and now at least a passing grade. For a game built almost entirely by a one-person dev team, I don't think that's bad at all. It is definitely much better than the much higher profile, more polished alternatives where it matters most. Fun. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for those of you on the fence after my initial review. If you've been longing for a decent modern drag racing game that for the most part just works, then you can't really go wrong here. Thank you all for watching. Bye.